Good morning. Today is May the 10th, 2023, and I'm going to talk about a 1928 map of Ocean Falls. So if you are not from Ocean Falls, this video is probably not the one for you. And if you are from Ocean Falls, you're probably wondering, why would I talk about this map? Well, because I can. And I think it's interesting to look back, say, 30 or 40 years before I arrived in Ocean Falls to get some idea of what was there and what wasn't there by looking at the map. And that would make it about almost 100 years ago now that this map portrays what was going on in Ocean Falls. So let us get into it and see what the map has to say. Oh, that's not a map. That's a dog. Hello, dog. How did you get there? Dog, so needy, always looking for attention. Ah, here we are. This is the map that we want to look at. Bring it down to size, or at least a manageable size. So this is the description of the map that I'm going to look at. You can see it was surveyed May 1928. It's of Ocean Falls, population around 2,000, situated approximately 300 miles north of Vancouver. And it's Pacific Mills Limited. And this map has the sawmill, paper mill, and the town site. And unfortunately, I do not have all of the sheets of this particular map. It is, I think, 4 or 5 sheets, and I only have 2 that pertain to the town site. And you can see this map was produced by or for the British Columbia Insurance Underwriters Association. So this is obviously to do with insurance. At least I would think it has something to do with insurance. So let's get started on what this map might. Oh, I'm just going to mention that you may notice this is kind of blurry. We would like this map to be a little sharper, but when I got the map, when it was given to me, it was already laminated, and the lamination process caused this blurry. I don't have access to a very good copy. Of course, I scanned it, and the scanning would also cause a slight deterioration in the quality. So this is where I want to start, with the stock farm, and is it about a mile from Oriental Town. Now this term, stock farm, it was not used in my time. When I say my time, I'm talking about 50s and 60s, perhaps into the very early 1970s. The term we used, of course, none of these buildings would have existed by the time I got to Ocean Falls in 1952. And the term that we use, so I would be, say, aware and walking around and have memories from later on, say 1956 onwards, and we use the term Farm Valley or Martin Valley. And I have some notes somewhere to say that up to about 1951, there were still some remnants of these buildings at the Farm Valley, even though farming actually stopped there in 1928 due to a hog cholera outbreak, and at which point all the hogs had to be destroyed and the cows were sold off. So we still, even after 1920, well, there's no reason to, I guess, to change the name until they started building the houses to make this a residential area rather than a farming area. So let's just get a look and see what's here. So there's the Martin Creek, which we would call the Martin River, and this is the trail to Twin Lakes, crossing the Martin River right there. And I don't think that this is the crossing that is today in Ocean Falls or Martin Valley, and the crossing that was there when I was there. And up here we have an iron tank, and it says it's 116 feet 5 inches. That's the elevation, and diameter 6 feet and height 6 feet, suggesting it was a cylinder. It's filled by, I think this says dam on the creek. So that's pretty much the physical layout. Let's see what buildings we might have. There's the piggery. This building is piggery, and there's the feed house there. And you come down this plank road, and I think this is going towards town. And this says 600 or maybe 800 feet to wharf. I don't know what wharf they're talking about there. This is the creamery. This building is unmarked. Maybe it's a cow shed, I don't know. And this just says shed. And down here is the, what does that say? That's the slaughterhouse. And this is another shed. And I think underneath it says to be destroyed. So I guess that building is going to go away pretty soon. So I don't know exactly where this is. Like, I don't know, is this the end of the valley as we knew it and the beginning of the road to the sandbar here? And is this where the gas station was in my time? I don't know. I think from here down to here is about 300 feet, which would easily fit into what I know of Martin Valley at that time, or in my time. If anybody knows, I think this might be a key point. If you could find out where that is, or if you remember where this crossing was. Anybody that's there now in Martin Valley, if you want to be an amateur archaeologist and try to find this tank, if it's still there, there should be some remnants of it. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was another tank, a bigger tank, when they started to build houses here. They would have probably needed a bigger tank there. So that's basically what I want to say about the valley. And I do have a picture here. Yeah, so this, oh yeah, I have some notes about some history of the valley. It says, okay, that the farm was established to provide meat, milk, and produce in 1913. And that probably stopped a year later because the company, that would be the Ocean Falls Company, went bankrupt. And then a year later, or a couple of years after it went bankrupt, they started again under the name of Pacific Mills. And they would have restarted the farm at that time. Now in 1918 or 1919, there was clearing and seeding, and by that the farm was extended by 40 acres. Now I don't know which direction it was extended, whether it extended towards the sandbar, or whether it was, say, where the graveyard is today, where it was up in that area that they were seeding, and I have no idea what they were trying to grow there. Between 1921 and 1927, I've seen several reports of them testing the animals. And in 1921, I guess it's the pigs, they were tested for TB. And they tested 21 animals, and 7 of them had to be destroyed. In 1927, they tested 26 animals, and none of them, there was no problem. Everybody's fine. And I mentioned the 1928 hog collar, which ended the farming at Martin Valley, or the Farm Valley, if you please, if you want. Now it says here, in a little note I have, in 1929, after the farm shut down, squatters moved in, and a shack town developed along the foreshore, and the men walked into work at Ocean Falls. Now this particular photograph, I have that it was taken in 1930, and it's supposed to be of Martin Valley, or that time would be the Farm Valley, say. And I don't know, there's nothing in there that I can prove to say, yes, this is definitely Martin Valley. Notice we've got a houseboat here, looks like another one there, and maybe there's another building over there, and it looks like a wharf here. Maybe this is the wharf that was 600 or 800 feet from the farm. I really don't know. Then after 1929, I have a couple of more notes. In 1933, there was land clearing, and they were going to put in a 9-hole golf course. But 1933, beginning of the Depression, business turned bad and the project was abandoned. It would have been interesting to have a golf course, out at Martin Valley. Maybe we would have turned out professional golf players instead of, or as well as swimmers. In 1943, they set aside, this was during the war, they set aside 2 acres and laid out 60 lots where people, and they had a contest to grow potatoes. And it turns out on these lots, the number of people that grew the potatoes, it turned out 4 tons of potatoes. The person who got the most produced 550 pounds. That was N. Thompson. And the best potatoes were produced by W. Check. So that's a little some of the things pertaining to the Farm Valley. And let's go back to the map. Okay, so we were looking at this map down here of the stock farm, and you can see it says 1 mile to Oriental Town, and this right beside it is Oriental Town. Not real beside it physically, but this is just an insert into the map. So here we have 1 mile from stock farm. This says 1 mile to the stock farm, so we're in the right place. And if you just had stood back and looked at that, you would say, yes, that's exactly how I remember that section of town in the late 1950s. All these duplexes and these bunkhouses that were along here. And this one at the end was a special bunkhouse or building. Now in 1928 it says this is the recreation hall, and this is a heating plant there. Now in my day this was a multi-use building. I think but I know I met there for the Stamp Club, and Stan's gym was there, and the Moose Hall I think was there. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong about the Moose Hall. Getting back to 1928, this was the women's bathhouse there. As you can see, this is Oriental Quarters. This is street, apparently no name. Interesting. This building here is the Japanese church, and down here is the Hindu temple. Very multicultural we are, and this is marked. All of these bunkhouses are marked Japanese, and this one is marked Hindu, and this one is Chinese. And you can see we've got a mess house there. Now the house numbers on here are quite interesting because these are numbered in the 1500s, the ones on the bottom row. The next ones are 1600s, then 1700s, and the ones on the top row are in the 1800s. And what's missing out of here, so I guess it was constructed later, is the Japanese language school, which I believe is over here. So let's go to see what else we have. I don't think there's anything else I need to tell you or note. Oh, this. I was going to make a note about this. It says in-house 100-foot hose, and I think that's a fire hose. And you see these things appear quite regularly, and that would be to do with the insurance, no doubt. Let's go a little bit. There was something else. Oh, yeah. I found this a very interesting picture. This structure here, of course, was not in place when I was there, which is why I find this so interesting. And that, I think the literature down here says that this is the Japanese school, the Japanese language school up there. Certainly a pretty large building. And I often wondered whether there was a mistake that this was actually the church, but it's not. I think pretty convincingly it's 2 different buildings, the church and the language school. So here we are back at this picture, and there's one other photograph I want to talk about. So you can see this is Ocean Falls, this picture, and I saw this in a magazine, so I got a photocopy of it, and I was trying to figure out where it was. Now you can see it consists of a lot of stairs going up the side of the mountain. Now, of course, there's a number of places where that could be. My first thought that this was from along Marine Drive, in what we used to call Japtown, but it could be easily up, by the swimming pool, going up from the Dam Hill up to 10th Street. We had also stairs going up from 6th Street up to 10th Street. I don't think that would fit with these, so my first thought was that this must be along Marine Drive, and I had no clue as to where. I just couldn't fit it in, and what was throwing me off was this ramp. I did not know of any places in town where you had a ramp leading up to the stairs, and what I was trying to do was look in the background and try to figure out where those hills or mountains were, and I couldn't do it, or at least it was taking too long to find an appropriate picture. And then I started looking at this a little closer, and I noticed this young girl here. Her haircut is very Oriental, and it looks like this girl has the same type. And if you get your magnifying glass and look at the children here, you'll see that they're dark-skinned. And so I began to think, aha, this is before 1942, and it's in Japtown. And the final clue, I looked at these house numbers, 1540 and 1538. And that was kind of the final piece of the puzzle that said, yes, okay, I know exactly where this is now. But it was just a bit of a detective story for me, trying to put all these little clues together before I finally figured out where we were. Is there anything more on this map that we need to look at? Of course there is. So this is the continuation of Oriental quarters from the inset that we were looking at. It's kind of interesting to look at some of these descriptions. You can hardly read them, but this one says shoe department. This one I think says cleaning and press. And this other one down here also says cleaning and press. This one says laundry and press. And I think this one says barber. Interesting that they have these little occupations that people are doing. And down here is wagons. That's what this one is. Now, I had an email from somebody. I was trying to figure out where the horse barn was, and from their description, I think that's this building, or at least a building that was in this particular place. Here's the oil tanks. Now this was not there when I got to Ocean Falls. And if you're living in Ocean Falls today, you might want to, if you want to be a amateur archaeologist, see if you can find anything in here. Maybe there's some posts or something cut off, of course, in the ground that was holding up this wharf. I kind of think that when I was there, we saw some things down there at low tide. You could see some indication that there was some structure there at one time. Now up here, this is what we would call Burma Road, but here it's 6th Street proposed. And here is the Balsam Apartments. This would be apartment number 3, and this is something about extinguishers. I think it's trying to say extinguishers installed. And again, that would be for the insurance aspect. And this down here says wood steps. I don't think there's no steps there when I was in Ocean Falls. There were slats on this little road to help you go up and down that street. And then here we start the houses along 6th Street, and I think there's one missing up here. I think a family named Burton lived up in that house that was up. I think there's a big rock there, and they lived pretty much on top of that rock. And down here, there's a garage right along 5th Street. And by the time I got to town, that was just another house that was there. And I have seen other maps where this garage got moved over to here. And this is interesting here. This is the greenhouse. We would expect that to be in my day, the ladies' dorm, commonly called the hen house. And here you can see Brenda and Brian Adams, if you're watching. Your duplex is conspicuous by its absence. And the liquor store, which would have been here, kitty corner from the women's dorm, that's also absent. So let's just go down a little bit, see what's... So there's the courthouse, which we would know as the Maples apartment. And over here, this is pretty much what we would see when I was there in the 50s and 60s. You got the boat shop here, and it was known as the Consolidated Shops. Machine shop here and carpenter shop there. Going down a little bit, there's the paint shop there, and this says gymnasium. So they had a gymnasium down here near the waterfront, and this is a plank road that ran behind the gymnasium. And this building is the wireless office. And I think if I've got it pretty well figured out, the morgue was in here somewhere in my day. And this, obviously, it's the townsite float. And that says stores. This is the boat repair. And that is a couple of boathouses there. And that looks, in my day we had what was known as a small boat workshop. And that looks to be bigger than the building that we called the small boat workshop. Now this is what the map would be if I had all 4 or 5 sheets. You can see down here there's fuel oil tanks. So they had oil tanks here and over here. And so this is sheet 1 that we've already looked at. And sheet 2 we're going to look at soon. Here's sheet 3, which I don't have. And sheet 4 is the paper mill and sawmill. And I did want to draw your attention to one thing. This thing here, it's a tank. And I imagine it's a water tank. And I don't know how many tens of thousands of gallons they're indicating there. But the point is that it's not where the tank was, the new, I guess what they would probably call it the new water tank. It was over here somewhere in my day. But I'll come back to this in a little while. And note that where it is, so you go up the dam hill. That's the far part of the dam hill, and then up that little hill that you went up to get to, and then you branch off to go to the ballpark. And then if you go up the 10th, this would be 10th Street now a little bit, and then up in the bush there is this water tank. So I think that's all we need to talk about on this sheet. We can go now to the next sheet. Past that, and there we are. And let's bring this one down to a reasonable size. And we'll go up to the top to see what we have. So this is just continuing on with 6th Street, and you can see most of this is exactly what you would expect. If you were dropped in there from today, you would probably see all of these buildings. They would be familiar to you. That's apartment 2, apartment 1, the high school, elementary school. Missing a few buildings in here. Corbin's duplex and the duplex that Mr. Scott, the school principal, lived in. Now when I mention people who lived there, if you're not contemporary with me, you may not know what I'm talking about, and telling you who lived there doesn't really help you very much. But for those people that were contemporary with me, that's kind of the buildings I think that were missing, or the duplexes and whatnot that were missing. And over on this side of the school, Huttons lived in that building there, and that's missing. And Peterson's just in beside, or just up from Huttons, or kind of kitty cornered diagonally up from Huttons. And in my day, Chats lived there. They moved kind of early on. I think they were there a couple of years when I was there before they moved. Chats, Jemsons, Pattersons, Hodsons, and I believe that was Ahola's house, that one there. Now, interesting to look up here. This is 10th Street, the end of 10th Street. So this sheet 2 just caught the very end of 10th Street. And these house numbers, I think they're in the 1020s. So I think this is, people who are more familiar with 10th Street will correct me, I'm sure, but I think this is at the top of the double. And if you don't know what the double is, it just means that you weren't living there at the same time I was. And of course, what's missing is all of 10th Street that went all the way down there, all the way over to there. The 10th Street ended right just at the end of just extended a little bit farther past the high school, and then in later years, the Gospel Fellowship Church was built up there. Now coming down, there's 5th Street and the playground. All of this is very familiar to me, all those houses, and all of this, very familiar. No change up to when I was living there. Let's come down a little bit. So here are some differences here. Here's the Union Church, not called the United Church yet, and there's the Roman Catholic Church. I don't know what this says in the brackets, but there was a Roman Catholic school in there for a number of years. This is the Company House, still standing today, House 34, and this is the duplex that I lived in right there that is absent. And notice we have tennis courts there. They kindly told us they're made of wood, and that's where number 5 was put in the 1940s, I believe. This just caught the corner of the house that was on top of the cliff, Griffiths' house. That's where Griffiths lived, and you can see they're starting the houses along Nevin Avenue. So from 1928 up to the time, say mid-1960s, all of this is the same. Nothing changed there in those years. Coming along 3rd Street, here's the, I'm not sure what it says. It was the women's dorm. Yeah, it does say women's dorm, across from the hospital. This says apartments. Now, we never called those apartments. We just referred to it as a quadruplex. And it looks like there is, yes, 4 suites in that quadruplex. Here's the hotel annex. Of course, it would be the old hotel annex. And the hotel itself is here. And the bakery there. And the laundry was here. More tennis courts. It seems that we always had tennis courts in town. And this says the garage for the ambulance. And I don't know what it says in brackets here. Maybe it's a description of the car that was in there, the vehicle, the ambulance. I don't know. And here's some more bunkhouses. Note these bunkhouses are right up against C Street. The streets have interesting names. That's C Street and A Street. A Street is, people that did know the names of the streets, that's Luthwaite Street, and this is Bennett Street over here. But so you have the bunkhouses, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bunkhouses along C Street, contained between, well, it's Falls Avenue and 3rd Street. 2nd Street is here. It doesn't go through here. And this part here says it's a reading library. And this Bunkhouse 7 is also partitioned. I don't know what that says. No idea what was in there, but obviously, not obviously, but it looks to me like it was partitioned off and maybe only half of the bunkhouse used as residences. Now, coming down again, all of this has been changed. At least it was changed by the time I got there. So this is the post office and customs office, and it was moved over to the other side of the fire hall. And I believe, I'm not sure whether this building includes the garages for the ambulance and the fire trucks and the ambulance. And this, I believe, is the tower, the hose tower. And I don't know any. I don't recall when that was taken down, and I don't think I certainly don't remember seeing it, but I could have seen it at a very young age and didn't remember it. And here's the foreman's quarters. That building was not there when I was there, and this office, the dentist's office, I think it was moved over to there, and it certainly wasn't there when I was, well, at least I don't remember it being there when I was there. When I was there, it was in the new hotel over here. And here's the general store, this bit, and it says here, Watchman's Route number 5. Now I've heard stories about the Watchman's routes, and I don't know whether there must have been, or there could have been multiple routes around town. I know there was at least 2 routes around the mill, because I used to work on one of those on days like July the 1st when there was a complete shutdown of the mill. But I certainly don't think I would want to be walking around town. I assume that you'd walk around making sure there was no fires. Not a job I would want to say walking around at 3 o'clock, especially in the winter or the fall. I want to draw your attention to this thing. This is the Watchman's Tower and searchlight. That certainly was not there when I was there. There may have been, when I think about it, I'd like to see some pictures of the wharf, in my time, to see if there's actually different planks in there. I kind of think there was. So they took that out, and they had to cover the hole somehow. So there should be some different planks there. Here's the warehouse. I assume this is the same building that I knew, although we didn't have this extension for the customs there. This is supply stores, and this is a hand-powered derrick. So they had a derrick of some sort. This building is a stranger to me. I never knew that. Here's the bridge to the mill. Now you notice this is not quite north-south, but if you're ever trying to orient yourself, just remember that the bridge goes almost north-south. So north is up there and south going down. So I think that's about it for here as far as things I want to talk about. I'm sure I'm forgetting some very important stuff. Oh yeah, no, I've already told you about that. So there was some other things, some pictures. Yeah, there's that watchtower that wasn't there when I was there. This is an interesting picture. You got the townsite wharf here with the ramp. This is reasonably high tide. I can tell by the degree of angle on this plank coming down. That's the townsite building. There's the old hotel and the general stores over there. And there's Baldy up there. Definitely Ocean Falls. Let's see what else I've got here. Okay. I did want to. This is another. Sometimes when I get these pictures of early Ocean Falls, so this one's 1923. I like to look to see what buildings are there and which ones are missing. And so I was looking at this, and I'm pretty sure I've got a better picture of this somewhere. I just couldn't find it. But when I was looking at it, I noticed this little speck here. And first I thought, well, maybe it's one of these rock faces. And then I noticed, you can see there looks like there's some access, maybe some stairs or something coming down there. And I thought, well, maybe that's a water tower because I don't see the water tower that we knew over here. So maybe the first water tower was over there. Remember when I saw that, I pointed it out on the map that to get to the water tower, you go up the dam hill, then there's the end of the dam hill, and you come around and you go up that little up the hill before you turn off to go to the ballpark, and then over there. So maybe I'm right. Maybe that is the water tower. I'll just go over. Now here's another. So this is 1922. Again, I like to look at these early maps to see what's what. This is interesting because we've caught some buildings, some houses in progress. So we know when those houses, I guess that's the rock cut, when those houses were built, obviously 1922. We didn't know that before, we know it now. Now here's the swimming pool. Now I mean the big hall. Swimming pool isn't there yet in this picture. And I was looking at this and wondering, could that be the water tower? Certainly looks like it could be a tank. And if you want to follow this along, so there's the big hall. You'd have to go up there and around to get to the end of the dam hill, and then start on 10th Street. And somewhere in here, there's got to be the road that leads up to the ballpark. So maybe this picture caught that, because there's no water tower over here where we would expect it. And the other thing that caught my eye, this line here is suspiciously straight. Yes, it is possible for trees to fall and they look straight, but I just found that such a long line that was straight. It looks like a man-made bridge or access point. And if anybody knows any different, I'd be happy to change my mind on that. I have to guess at some of these things. Anyhow, I think I've gone on long enough. I hope you found this interesting, and I hope you stay well and stay awesome.